Welcome into On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. It's the time for the Saturday morning conversation. Have some latest news and notes for you on the Texas Longhorns. Let's start with the transfer portal. The Longhorns late last night closed it out, and as of early this morning, we do not know of any new names that have gone into the portal. So that gives us a little bit of a tally at this point on where things sit. Texas ended up having 22 players enter into the NCAA transfer portal. At this point, they've signed 15 new players from the transfer portal. So it's a net 7 negative at this point for losses versus additions. That being said, that is very typical in this day and age. You almost always sign a little bit more in your signing class because you think you're going to lose more. I will say this one thing that I was told prior to the transfer even opening has come to pass. I was told that we would see Longhorns get between 15 to 18 new players on their roster. The Longhorns currently at 15. Looking a little deeper into the numbers, that's what I want to do somewhat this morning. Texas lost 22 players overall. No position was struck as hard as running back. Texas entered 2025 season with 6 running backs. 5 of them are no longer on the roster, including Trey Wisner, C.J. Baxter, Jarrett Gibson, Ricky Stewart as well, and Christian Clark most recently. That's 5 of 6. Only James Simon will return. Now, the Longhorns have went out and made really good hay in the portal with Hollywood Smothers out of NC State, as well as Raleek Brown from Arizona State, both first team all conference players at the ACC and Big 12, respectively. But there's no doubt that a couple of positions were hit hard. Running back was certainly one of them. Offensive line was another. Now, it's not like Texas got hit hard at the offensive line from a top line perspective like they did at running back with Trey Wisner, but they did have 5 guys go into the portal, including Nato Umeozulu, Connor Stroh, Daniel Cruz, Nate Kibble, and obviously Nick Brooks. Nick Brooks committed to Alabama on Friday. But those 5 are big numbers, especially when you're looking for depth along the offensive front. Texas thus far has brought in 3 or has commitments and signings from 3, led by Melvin Siani, the offensive tackle out of Wake Forest, a 2-year starter for the Demon Deacons. He was a late addition on Thursday. They've also added some depth pieces. Jonte Newman is definitely a depth piece. He was a true freshman at Texas A&M last year. He comes over to Texas this year. The other one is an intriguing prospect to me, and that's Dylan Sikorsky. I think that's a good way to put him. He is an offensive guard that started 8 games at Oregon State in 2025. Is he good enough to start at Texas? Is that all Texas is going to do at guard? I don't think so. They're attempting to get some guys on campus as we speak, kind of. I can talk a little bit to that in a minute. But long story short, after running back and offensive line, they both had 5 players going to the portal. The next one I thought was hurt a little bit more than expected was linebacker. Not only did Leonga Lafau decide to opt to go into the transfer portal, while Anthony Hill is off to the NFL draft, Bo Barnes, a key backup, also decided to leave. That put Texas in a little bit of a bind. Of course, they answered with Rasheem Biles, the all-conference player from Pitt, as well as Justin Cryer, another ACC linebacker out of Florida State. All in all, it's not a horrible situation at linebacker that it could have been after they lost not only Lafau, but Barnes. But now I think that with Biles coming in, Texas actually might have a almost as good of a linebacker core this coming year as they had last year. Of course, it's going to be tough to replace Anthony Hill. I'm not sure any linebacker for Texas has that kind of athleticism and size combination, including Rasheem Biles, who may be as productive as any of them at this point. A couple of the news and notes that I want to go over. I kind of made a list of guys that I thought were bigger losses than some others, while I also made a list of guys that I think are bigger additions than others. My biggest losses from this portal period Obviously, I think Trey Wisner is a big one for me. When you have games like he had against Texas A&M twice, against Oklahoma twice, you get the feeling that this is a guy that you want to finish his career as a Longhorn. He's not going to do that. He's already signed with Florida State. But Wisner is a big loss because I thought he brought the juice every single time time he put on the uniform. No, he wasn't perfect. He's not this big inside running back, but he gave it, and I think everybody would agree, gave everything he had for the Longhorns. I think he'll be sorely missed from a guts and gumption standpoint. Maybe Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers can handle that portion of the business for Texas, but it's something to consider as we move forward. The other guys that I mentioned and that I put in that top list, DeAndre Moore and Parker Livingston at wide receiver. Well, we were all focused on Cam Coleman, and rightfully so, the wide receiver out of Auburn coming in on the transfer portal. Texas lost two big contributors at wide receiver in this portal class, and Moore and Livingston. I think Moore ended up at Colorado, or I know he ended up at Colorado. Livingston obviously made headlines by going to Oklahoma. But those two guys were solid players for the Longhorns. Not spectacular, but solid. And I think they'll be solid in their college career elsewhere, too. I hope Livingston doesn't come back to bite Texas, but we'll see how that goes. The other two that are the last one that I really wrote down that I said is a loss was Lianga Lafau. Young man led Texas in tackles several games in 2025. Good all-around player. Was he perfect? No. But was he really good and good enough to continue playing for the Longhorns? Yes. He also ends up at Colorado as well. I also added two other players that are slightly below that for me. That first list of four in Wisner, Moore, Livingston, and Lafau. The other two were Nick Brooks, the big offensive lineman that decided to go to Alabama on Friday. Brooks, I thought, had a lot of talent and still does have a lot of talent. We'll see if he's able to achieve his ceiling when he goes to Alabama, because I do think that young man has a chance to play football for a long time if he stays after it and stays on the straight and narrow. One thing about Nick Brooks, I would say Alabama will be his fifth school in 5 years. So he played high school ball at three different high schools as a sophomore, junior, and senior. Then he went to Texas this past year. Now he's going to Alabama. That's five different schools. We'll see if Alabama, for whatever reason, is able to give him some consistency that he didn't get at Texas, or that he failed to reach out for. Bo Barnes, the linebacker out of Dallas Skyline, leaves Texas also just after 1 year. The young man played a little bit in the bowl game against Michigan, but he's going on to Kentucky. I think that's a situation where you would like to see Texas develop him a little bit more. But that's four big names, I thought, and two younger guys that maybe cut a little too deep for Texas. As far as the guys that I think Texas is bringing in, they're a little bit different than the others. I've been mentioning both Brown and Smothers, the two running backs out of Arizona State and North Carolina State. Obviously, Cam Coleman fits in that category. The young man from Auburn is one of the top players overall in the transfer portal. I think you place him alongside Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley, who've both decided to return. And I'm looking at a situation right now where I think Texas is going to have one of the best receiving corps in the country. I don't know if they'll perform that way. Who knows? But if you were to line them up, they will have, other than maybe Ohio State, Texas will have as high a draft picks probably out of its first three as just about anybody else. That's how good I think that group can be. Of course, we got to see if we can get them out of it. The other guys that I wrote down that I think are big additions. I mentioned Melvin Siani, the offensive tackle from Wake Forest. I think he's in that first group. I think Rasheem Biles, the linebacker out of Pitt, is also in that first group. And then at defensive tackle, I had Ian Gerfard and Bo Mascow at corner. So you really look at it, and I've got 7 frontline guys that Texas has added in the transfer portal. while they lost what I consider 4 frontline guys. So a net positive of 3. I do think they got some nice younger pieces to add to depth. And I mentioned not only Dylan Sikorsky earlier, the offensive lineman out of Oregon State, but also there's another guy that I think that is really good that I think will play a role, and that's Michael Masunas, the tight end out of Michigan State. Texas only has really Spencer Shannon as the other inline tight end. Masunas, we'll see if he's better than Shannon as an inline blocker almost immediately, because I'm sure those two will be battling it out for that spot for the Longhorns. Mascow, by the way, going to be getting a look not only at cornerback, which he played at Rutgers and was an all Big Ten honorable mention selection, but also get a look potentially at nickel, depending on what Texas does with Grayson Littleton and that situation. Now, as far as long story short, I guess 15 guys coming in so far. Texas still has some recruiting to do. No doubt they're trying to get some more offensive linemen. Melvin Barton out of Jackson State finished his official visit to Texas on Friday. He went off to Mississippi State. Texas is also talking to Louisville offensive lineman Jordan Church, 6'4", 310 pounds. He's on a visit to Texas Tech. He's also looking at a couple other SEC schools. And then there's Jordan Seaton, the big offensive lineman out of Colorado. I mentioned Seaton for one reason. I can't say for sure that Texas is completely out of that. Now, what I mean by that is really simple. I think that Texas, with the addition of Melvin Siani, is probably not going to be in the running for a guy that may or may not push somebody else out that Texas has already spent a lot of NIL money on. It's a crowded room at that point at tackle. That being said, Seaton has visited Mississippi State. He has visited Miami. He's told folks previously that he's going to visit Texas. We'll see if that visit actually transpires. I get the sense that Miami may be the future home of Jordan Seaton at this point. He was actually on a visit last night there. We'll see if Texas can get in on Jordan Church or if there's another guy that they like that is still available in the group. We do expect Texas, and I'll say this, we do expect Texas to have official visitors on Sunday. So that'll give you a little preview of that when I talk about college players and who they're still after. Mentioning that, one defensive end Texas is after is Prince Will Umamelian. He's from Maynard, Texas, just 20-30 miles out of the Austin city limits. He recorded 9 sacks this year for Ole Miss. The issue with Prince Will now, apparently he has already signed an agreement with Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is trying to keep him to it. But he is saying that he's going to enter into the transfer portal. We'll see if, as has been commonplace in this year's transfer portal, he actually reverts and goes back to Ole Miss when his feet are held to the fire. Not 100% sure what will happen there, but it's something that I want to keep we need to keep our eyes on. Last thing I want to say about the portal, a couple of news and notes. I mentioned Nick Brooks to Alabama. Christian Clark, the running back, has now gone to South Carolina. And then one guy that's an older one, an oldie but a goodie, Jonte Cook, who played his freshman year at Texas. He ended up going to Syracuse last year. He actually has now signed with Ole Miss. So Texas will be playing Jonte Cook in 2026. Should be an interesting matchup there. Before I let you guys go, I want to say one more thing. Jerry and CJ are actually going to be over at DKR in Moncrief, the football facility, a little bit later this morning. The junior days, the first one of the year for high school recruits, is coming up today. One of the key names that we'll see there is Brian Swanson, a big offensive lineman out of Dallas's South Oak Cliff. Also, big offensive lineman from Anna, Texas, Peyton Miller, along with a number of others that will be in town for the Longhorns' first junior day. The guys will have a report as soon as possible. Also, if there are any other official visitors that step on campus from the transfer portal. We'll try to break in and let you know about it. But that's going to do it for this morning's Saturday conversation. Try to give you a thorough rundown, kind of when the portal stopped last night at 11:59 p.m. And where Texas is left to go. Again, 15 newcomers, 22 guys lost to the portal. I do think Texas did a good job there at the end of keeping some key guys, including Warren Roberson, Derek Williams, Kobe Black. The secondary, once I think Will Muschamp came on board, you did not see as much attrition as perhaps you once thought. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of On Texas Football. Thank you to our producer, Matt Hutchison. I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em horns.